Hafa and welcome to the first season of Guampreneurs, a podcast to explore the entrepreneurial stories that shape our business landscape. Through the season, we will be speaking with entrepreneurs, subject matter experts, and leaders to share their stories, insights, and experience relative to doing business on our beautiful island. The Guam Economic Development Authority has a number of programs to support entrepreneurs and investors, which we will discuss in all episodes. Join us, but more importantly, take action to get your business venture going, growing, and flourishing right here at home. My name is Melanie Mendiola. I'm the administrator and CEO of the Guam Economic Development Authority and your host for today. And joining us, we have David John. David John's most important role in life is our board chair.
That's true.
Of the Guam Economic Development Authority.
Yeah. I wake up every morning thinking of this.
Yes. So, Chairman John, you've been on the board for what, 12 years? Over 12 years?
Over 12 years.
Going on 2 administrations. Yep. He does have other involvements, though. He is the managing director of ASC Trust, the largest administrator of retirement plans in the Asia-Pacific region, with over $1 billion in retirement assets and over 36,000 participants. Chairman John, David, DJ, as we call him at GEDA, was educated at the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota, where he now serves on the board as well. Love and marriage brought him to Guam, as he is married to Teresa Ada John. They have 2 kids, Pedro and Anthony. In addition to GEDA and his university, he sits on a number of boards. He's also the recipient of the Guam SBA 2016 Small Business Person of the Year. Hafa and welcome, sir.
Hafa day. Thanks for having me.
From the GEDA team, we have Matt Baza, Assistant Manager for our Business and Economic Development Division. Matt's team oversaw the implementation of multiple grants during the COVID pandemic, from the Small Business Pandemic Assistance Grant to the most recent series of LEAP grants, the Local Employers Assistance Grants. Over $100 million was distributed to our local economy in the last couple of years. Matt played a big role in that. He also oversees the Guam Product Seal, the QC program, and the team is tasked. He works alongside our business development manager, Ed Camacho, and they're tasked with getting our SSBCI venture capital program out there, which we will speak at length to today. Hafa day, Matt.
Hi, Mel. How, Chairman? Good to see you. Good. Thank you for inviting me to be here today.
All right. Okay, let's get to it. David.
Mel.
So you arrived on our shores in the boom of Japanese investment on our island.
And I killed it.
You did.
It ended right when I got here.
Why the financial services industry? Why didn't you open a hotel or a bar or some kind of like tourism-related business? What was it about retirement and financial services?
Well, just finance is my background, so that was where it came from, that point of it. But I came here on vacation back in the 80s, and I met up with a guy by the name of Alan Pickens, and he was the head of KPMG Pete Marwick. And everything was booming. I mean, there was a demand for all kinds of services and products, as well as personnel and skill sets, and companies couldn't fill them themselves, and so there was kind of a shared philosophy on some of these things. So KPMG set up a company, which was a transactional advisory company to do things that they couldn't do under their umbrella over at KPMG Marwick. So ASC stands for Administrative Services Corporation. I stopped using it years back because it's not exactly a marketing wonderland. But we did everything. We did retirement planning. We used to do all the bank reconciliations for Citibank. We did job placements, payroll. Back then, you had to have a local person on the board.
Okay.
So Al just kept appointing me to all these boards. I had no idea what I was doing, but I learned how to be on boards.
Okay.
So I've kind of been ingrained in that early. I'm probably missing some of the companies that we had along the way, but we did a number of services. And then as the economy matured itself, we pared back as the skill sets came in and took care of certain things. We became more specific and moved on toward retirement planning, and because there was no retirement systems here at the time other than U.S. Social Security system and the pension system for the government.
Right. That was the emergence of the 401k.
Yes.
Right.
And GEDA actually was one of the reasons it started, because in the early QCs, if you remember when we redid the QCs a while back for the hotels, we said we could remove 401ks now. I remember I got a weird look at me saying, you're going to remove 401ks from the QCs because they weren't needed anymore.
Right.
But when the QCs first began back in the 90s, there were no retirement systems for the private sector. So GEDA required that a 401k be set up if you were to get a QC, which pushed more companies to get it just from a supply-demand structure.
So the purpose of a qualifying certificate, so this was really the program that GEDA was, we built the business, or GEDA was built on the qualifying certificate product, right? Quote unquote, right, Matt?
Yes.
So QCs were, why were they, when did they came out? Well, GEDA basically was started to do QCs.
GEDA started in 1965, and the QC program started in 1965. And really, it was just to help get investment into Guam. It was really to drive, foreign direct investment and even local investment in all sorts of industries. If you drive through Tumon, basically Tumon was built with the QC. Without that initial startup incentive, it would have been much harder for those hotels to recoup their investment and to be successful. I mean, you have hotels that have been open 30, 40. I think Hilton celebrated its 50th anniversary last year, and they got a QC. So, and the chairman is right. They were required to provide retirement plans and benefits and all of that because that structure wasn't set up. So there was some forward thinking there to say, if we're going to give them a tax benefit, let's make sure these companies treat their employees right. And I think that sort of helped grow the awareness of that. And now that's sort of industry standard for a lot of types of businesses on Guam.
Right, and I think that if you go across the United States, the 50 states and our territories, if you ask them, so because when people ask me, they say, what exactly is a QC? I said, the QC is the contract that governs what kinds of tax rebates and tax abatements you're getting in order to invest in a specific industry in Guam. Usually it's to start a new industry or something that we don't have. We start a new industry, or what are the QC requirements, Matt? It's got to create jobs.
Create jobs, economic activity, reduce imports, reduce prices, vitally needed facilities,
Right.
Things like that. So,
So
really,
another franchise like a Dunkin' Donuts is not a vitally needed facility.
I would probably say, I love Dunkin' Donuts, so, but I would, maybe not for a QC. I think maybe enough people in Guam like donuts, where a Dunkin' Donuts might just be
I
fine.
vitally need it.
Yeah.
But our island's economy
Yeah.
may not vitally
Exactly.
Remember, we redid the reasoning behind it, though. Remember, to start an industry,
Right.
save an industry,
Right.
socially, a community need, like a hospital,
Yes.
or a multiplier industry.
Right.
Yeah.
No, definitely. So now, Mr. Chair, David, the Japanese downturn also happened while you were building. You were still in the relatively early days, first 10 years or so
Yeah,
of doing your
correct.
business, when the BRAC realignment happened. So this is when Naval Station went back to the local government. In addition, the Japanese boom basically went bust. Tell me about that experience as a professional, as a builder of businesses.
Back then we were so early in our business that it obviously affected it, right? Because you had the dollars that were coming in dried up, and a lot of the projects that were anticipated didn't go through. But from our end of it, we were just starting out, and so we didn't feel it because we didn't know what was missing, right? It wasn't like we had the economy was here and it went to here. It was plateauing, and so I don't think we felt it that much from a business standpoint. We
Right.
just kept plowing along, working our.
What'd you see around you from like your peers, from your colleagues, people that you ran into on the street?
Yeah, it was falling back, and especially when you look at the hotels that had just opened, and along the way also, if you remember back then, we had the series of storms that just kept coming.
Yes.
And so you had these brand new, beautiful hotels, and they were just getting whacked, and these guys were looking at like, is this going to happen every year? So there was a number of things that kept coming together back then to make it a interesting time.
Would you draw any comparisons to that time versus the pandemic?
No, the pandemic was space-like. It was just I just look back and think of some of the things we were doing and go, what the heck?
It was an out-of-body experience.
Yeah, and I wouldn't compare it to that at all because people were still busy. It was just reshuffling of things, and as bad as it was, the downturn. Some of the things weren't in play yet, and it was just there was so much demand on things that letting the air out of the balloon a little bit wasn't necessarily bad. I think it was kind of after that where it plateaued and we started losing people off island, skilled people.
Right. Well, now it's like this sort of fumbling we're fumbling and finding our way to this new level of this new kind of economic state where we can continue to grow the economy, continue to plan forward, continue to build with the build-up, but not squeeze out any particular industry. I mean, I think that's a going concern for us at GEDA.
Right.
Now, tell us, just back to sort of your entrepreneurial story, when did you start to diversify your investments? So you had your core business, ASC.
Yep.
And along the way, did you kind of concurrently do other things, invest in passive investments or become a partner in any new thing? Or was it sort of well after that business had been matured and developed?
So, I mean, I was always investing in public market types of things along the way. But no, I was fully engaged with ASC running the company. We did different things. We set up a company in Manila. We were running retirement plans out of Southeast Asia, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Philippines, Indonesia. So we were doing work over in different areas of the world, but it was all centered around retirement planning. It wasn't until maybe 10 years ago, I had a series of deaths around me. And I started becoming, thinking about death and thinking, man, I own the company pretty much outright. If something happens to me, it could be a big problem for the island or the community, because we serve like 80% of the retirement participants. And so I started thinking I need to get other groups in here or something. And so the current governor, Leon Guerrero, she was CEO at the bank at the time. So we sat down and figured out a pathway to get the bank involved. We called it institutionalizing the retirement system.
Okay.
So, I still have ownership in ASC, and then I took some of my proceeds and bought more into the bank. So I'm involved with the bank side of things now too. But what it did is it made sure that the retirement structure would be there regardless if I lived to 105 or, get hit on the street leaving here today.
So the purpose was for continuity.
Yep.
And legacy planning.
Yep.
And that type of thing.
And that was really the only things when we do our audit, we just kept getting hit on that too. What's your legacy planning?
It's going to take more than a key man policy.
Yeah.
To get you where to keep you going forward.
So I think that was a good thing. At that point in time, I had additional capital and deployed it into other things.
So taking on business partners. So it was ultimately finding the right fit. What was it about Bank of Guam that because I saw it announced in the paper in 2016, I think it was, and then it was like a buyout that was a conversion, right, to Bank of Guam stock that occurred in 2016, then another kind of tranche in 2021.
Yep.
And then, what was it about that? How did that become how did that make sense as a kind of a marriage of organizations?
It's a good question. So instead of just an outright sale, we were looking at it, my wife and I, Teresa, were looking at it, do we want to do this or do we not want to do this? And the bank was trying to figure out if it would fit. And so we kind of went into it dating. And so they bought 25% of the company. And immediately we structured it in such a way that it required 80% of the board to make major decisions. So immediately the bank was a partner in the company. So they had a say at the table. They weren't a diluted minority partner. And then we slowly bought into it. And we keep that thing going. So it's a good partnership from that end of it. But my father-in-law, who was with the bank board for, 30 years, he was the first one to put it in my ear. If you ever thought about bringing the teams together, because the synergies are there.
Right.
From a financial services.
They did not have a retirement services arm.
Yep.
However, they did have an investment arm.
Yep. And we merged those together just in the last 90 days, actually.
Okay.
So now we have one advisory firm and one record-keeping firm. We have two trust companies, or two trust divisions. One's the FDIC, and then we have the Guam Trust, which is what we fall under.
Great, awesome. This would be actually, I think, a great time to transition as you continue with your entrepreneur story over to our GEDA Venture Capital Program, the SSBCI Venture Capital Program. SSBCI stands for State Small Biz. No, okay, Matt, go.
State Small Business.
We're both acronym challenged.
State Small Business Credit Initiative. So, it's a really exciting program. I think the federal government, the U.S. Department of Treasury, more specifically, is deploying billions of dollars across the nation to help spur small business growth, and it's a mixture of programs: capital access through direct loans, loan guarantees, collateral support, and I think most apropos to this conversation is the venture capital program. So GEDA, where we were able to receive tens of millions of dollars, I think $50 million thereabouts through SSBCI for Guam. And one of the first things
this isn't GEDA's first bite at the SSBCI apple. Everyone calls this SSBCI 2.0 because the first round was about a little over 10 years ago, where it was deployed in Guam for the purpose of loan guarantee, similar to SBA's loan guarantee program.
Yes.
Some other states actually did start a venture capital arm with some limited successes. And so we thought we'd try our hand because of the amount of money that came into Guam. We assessed the banks. I remember we did like a stakeholders meeting with all the banks and said, how much volume do you think you'll get loan-wise? and we didn't hit the mark to be able to utilize all the funds. So we said, okay, let's go ahead and turn this into the VC. Let's try our hand at the venture capital piece, right? Right. Okay. What else?
Yeah. So, so basically, I think we're right now for the first go, we're looking at $10 million in VC money that we're looking to push out. And really, what it is, it's GEDA will partner with either startup businesses looking to expand, and become part of their sort of journey to success.
So if we walked the '80s, David John, young DJ
with a flowing mane of
with
hair.
a flowing mane of hair. Okay, if we were back in the 80s
Yes.
and this program existed, David John would do what? He'd come to GEDA and say, listen, I got an idea in my head.
He would come to GEDA. He would say, I have the best idea in the world. To GEDA, he'll say, I have the best idea in the world. This idea will change Guam's economy. It will make millions of dollars in the next 7 to 10 years. But I need some help in raising some capital
To make it happen.
I have
$25,000.
I have $25,000 in the bank. This business is going to cost me $250,000, $500,000, whatever it is. I want GEDA to come in and partner up. Well, the program basically says GEDA can partner up to 49% in that business idea. Oh, first and foremost, GEDA needs to think that's a good idea. Second of all, then we start looking at the mechanics of it. Okay, are you a small business? We're kind of targeting business less than 500 jobs. Ideally, I think almost every.
You must be based in Guam.
Based in Guam, primary business activity overall occurs in Guam, and you have to create. Your goal is the main goal, obviously, is creation of jobs, right? So
creation of economic activity. So it's not meant for passive investments.
No.
It's not meant, and then because it's federal monies, it's not meant for like retiring debt, retiring taxes, retiring, just settling litigation and stuff like that, right? But the key thing, the red herring here is it's got to be at least a 50% capital or match type of contribution situation, right? Okay, so I was going through this exercise. So back to young David John. So if David John said, I would like to open up my business at Aru now. I own this beach. Well, actually, my family, my Tsamoru roots own this beach. The beach is worth $2 million. Can I get $2 million from GEDA? I believe and so this is what my question was very recently.
Right.
To which the answer was no.
No.
Other venture capital programs might do that. You can pledge that towards your ownership in the overall capitalization, meaning the overall valuation of the business. It can be there. But as far as the amount you acquire from the treasury, it's got to be a 50-50 match tied to economic activity.
Yes.
Meaning, okay, I have this land. I'm going to develop administrative services company on this land, and I'm going to cut paychecks while I sip margaritas, maybe have like lawn chairs on the beach. But I actually have to borrow against it and have cash on hand.
That is how the program is designed. So, if young David John were to say, I need $100,000, I would say, well, GEDA can come in with $49,999 pretty much. You need to have the $50,001 in cash.
Or in assets that you acquire. Like it can't be something that you already own that now you're pledging to the business.
As far as I understand,
that was the one. That's the red herring about SSBCI versus other venture capital types of programs.
Oh yeah.
Which back to you, sir. I know you have some experience with VC. I mean, just venture capital versus private equity. What's the difference?
Okay, so first we have the public markets and the private markets,
Okay.
right? And so the public markets are what we do in our 401k or S&P 500. So
Governed by the SEC. I mean, your stocks, your small cap stocks, mid cap, low, that world.
yeah, and there's liquidity, a lot of liquidity. You can buy them today, sell them tomorrow or the next day, right? Where private, so venture and private are both for the private. They're both privately owned,
Right.
And as such, the first thing where they're similar is you put your money in, and there's not daily liquidity. There's not daily valuing of the shares. There's typically a liquidity period out in the future, 3, 5, 10 years out, that you as a shareholder will have the ability to tap in, sell your shares back to either a new buyer or a pool of money that might be there. So there's liquidity tranches that come up with it. So that's how they're similar. Where they're different is is ventures typically early on. And so you have different stages of a company. You have one that just, ta-da, I got this great idea. I have no money, but I have this great idea and I need cash. And so typically a venture is going to come in and put in typically more than half the cash. But the worth of the idea is measured somehow. And so you put that on the balance sheet that the idea, we think is worth, X millions of dollars. And so the venture will come in and put a certain amount of money in, typically less than 5%. And so it's not a majority stake. That's the one thing different. Where private equity is later in the stages. So ventures early on, it's the ta-da, and then as you go into pre-seed, seed, and then you have A, B, C, different rounds of financing. And so you have ventures that will come in each of these stages, typically leading up to an IPO.
Right.
So these companies are heading towards public offering or being turned over to a private equity company.
Right.
So there'd be a sale of the asset down the road somewhere. Where a private equity is typically mature businesses.
Okay.
And where
Must they be in distress?
No, not at all. No, not at all. In fact, what you want, there's a couple different types of private equity that could be in there, but the majority of them that are there is a lot of them are boring companies. What you want is a really strong cash flow, because where the money is to be made in private equities, they lever these things up really, really high.
Okay.
And so when you're going in, they're not putting 100% of their capital up. The private equity investors, they're bringing it in with debt. And so
Okay.
Yeah.
So for example,
And that's not with venture. Venture's the opposite. They're going to bring in the cash, and that cash is going to be
venture is
spent
bringing
growing
in the
business.
seed.
Yes.
And private equity is then offering debt?
Well, no, they're mature companies. And
Okay.
you'll have a company that'll come in. It doesn't have to be debt. I mean, you can just be a private. Well, three of us got together. We're going to pull a company private.
Okay.
And so that, it can be something like that. But the majority of the ones, when we say the word private equity, what we're talking about is typically a pool of money that's been part of it is investment direct, and part of it is debt. And you go in and you buy a company out. And you're looking for companies typically that have strong cash flows,
Okay.
strong, consistent cash flows, which can pay back the debt, pay down the debt.
Consistent cash flow.
And then 3 to 5, 10 years out, you'll have a window period where you'll either refinance the debt and then have a liquidity moment for shareholders. Maybe not buy them all the way out, but they get a nice dividend in the
Okay.
mail, or the ability to sell back to the pool, or a new private equity company will come in and buy that asset out and do the rinse and repeat. Right?
Right.
They'll lever it up. They'll look at the cash flow. They'll see how they can build the company up.
Right.
So it's a lot of leverage, typically, not always, but it's mature businesses. To companies that are further than maturity sometimes, where
Right.
ventures early on.
So I've been looking at some private equity holdings just in different, places in the States. And I'm seeing private equity owning like a chain of gyms
Yeah.
or a chain of like restaurants
Yep.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, especially gyms. Think about the memberships.
Right.
Think about how many people don't show up to the gym, keep getting debited every month. It's once you sign up for it, you do it with your credit card, you do it with your bank. It's just a consistent flow of cash, right?
Yep.
That's what they're
Yep.
looking for.
I have a girlfriend who owns a daycare, and she did really well with the first daycare. She owned a second daycare, and childcare is a big deal. And there's been programmatic funding to help get more childcare going. And so I said, hey, what's to stop you from opening like 4 daycare? I mean, just having like a chain of daycares. And she said, money. And I said, okay. She goes, can you give me a grant? And I said, no, we can't give you a grant. We don't do that anymore. We don't have any pandemic grants right now anymore. But we can probably do something VC related. But it's a matter of, partners. Do you have partners? And then, or, maybe your equity stake. And she said, well, I have some cash flow from the daycares already that I could pledge towards the next thing. But I also have, she goes, yeah, I guess I could tap into a partner or two to kind of shore that up even more. So somebody like her,
Right.
she would first probably come in as a venture capital prospect for GEDA, right? And then
Yep.
she'd scale up her business to the point where she'd have to get her financials, she'd have to get a strong cash flow over asset ownership or over the asset valuation of the business, of the book, or is that the book value of the business? Like, meaning, would it help if she owned the buildings that operated her daycares? Would that make a difference? Or is it more the strong cash flow, the business model,
From
and
a
that sort of
private
thing?
equity
Yes.
standpoint, the building wouldn't be the big one. It'd be the cash flow.
It'd be the cash
You're
flow.
not typically buying, unless the building's in some unique area where you're going to see values go up, tremendously.
Right.
But what private equity is more looking for is strong cash flow so that they can lever against it.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. No, I'm just thinking about, because we have these small businesses that come knocking on our doors, and with venture capital, I don't know about you, Matt, but like we are finding a lot of folks who want to do stuff like open up a food truck and things like that, and we're sort of, we really want to encourage people to think outside the box, think about things that aren't already here, think about ways to innovate, and expand the industries outside of tourism on our island, right? Things that are technology based, for example.
Yeah, and I mean, in GEDA, we are certainly targeting certain types of industries. Technology is a big one, aquaculture, agriculture, those things like that. Businesses that can lead to export, because growing an export industry out of Guam is big. Manufacturing is big, but yeah, like Mel said, businesses and that can really help diversify our economy. Because I think that's one thing with COVID, right? That we really were taught was that we need to diversify outside of our traditional economic base. Of course, we need to fully support our tourism industry and everything that makes that brings home the bacon right now. But if we're able to deploy some of this VC money to really help expand industries that really, if they can get that little help to go to the next level or grow new industries that we're looking for, I think that really would be the best. I think really would deploy that money really most effectively for Guam.
Right. Industries or sectors that are hot right now in the venture capital world. I've been seeing a lot of really a lot of technology driven, and in different subsectors of technology like medical or healthcare, applications in healthcare, most especially is what I've been reading a lot about. I don't know, David, do you have any other insights to this?
No, when you think about the venture markets in the States, a lot of it is around technology and areas where you have fast growth.
Right. Silicon Valleys of the world.
Yeah, and that's a different animal. I don't know how much we how much we really want to compare ourselves to that one.
Right.
Because if you can think about the companies that'll come out of the venture world, and you'll hear them saying, "Oh, we only lost $36 million this month." Well, but we're gaining market share. I mean, it's like, what?
Yeah.
You're happy you're losing money. So where it's a little bit different is they're trying to grow the company up to a mass where it can cover itself and move forward, right? And so the venture money is coming in there to fill that void, to grow based on not necessarily profits. What we're going to be doing here, I think, is more of a venture towards entrepreneurialism.
Right.
And in that regard, I think we need to, if we're in our role where it's right to be there, is to work with the entrepreneurs to focus on the balance sheet.
Right.
I mean, a profit and loss is awesome, right? The cash flow is king when you're an entrepreneur. You're just trying to buy yourself into the business every month and stay afloat. And you can easily have a profitable business that goes bankrupt. And you say, well, how's that, right?
Right.
Well, you're growing too fast. You have too much accounts receivable out there.
Right.
You can't keep up with the product that you need. And so you're getting yourself, you might have a P&L that looks nice on paper,
right,
but you don't have the cash to support it, and so that's where the other venture money could come in.
You have a concentration of clients in Guam too, right? Because if, like, let's say GovGuam, let's say you're a business to business vendor, and your clients are DoD and government of Guam, those are two pretty significant concentrations to hold.
And in trouble a lot, or very quickly with the way they pay their bills, right?
Right.
So if there's one thing you want, really talk to the entrepreneur early on, is focus on cash flow and balance sheet. Profits will come, right? As long as you can stay in business, you'll be fine. But too many people, so that's kind of opposite what venture's doing in the States, right? I mean, they're looking at...
They're flushing companies with money to drive out competition, be the only player in this innovative area, and then start charging a subscription or whatever it might be, right?
Monetize it later.
Right.
Yep.
No, for sure. That's what I'm seeing. No, that's good insight. That's good advice. Do you see any, this kind of ties back to sort of in the history of, you've seen businesses come and go over the last 30 or so years. What are some rookie mistakes that you've observed on the street? Or have encountered yourself? I made this rookie mistake. Don't do
mistakes. Liking your idea too much without testing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just sounded great. And you run it past people, they look at you with a blank stare. And you still didn't get it, that no one's getting your great idea.
Right.
So keeping it simple, make sure it hits the markets, make sure other people, see that there. It doesn't mean that everyone who's been successful has followed that model. I mean, a lot of people have done something like that, will never happen. Right. And then they do it right.
In all the applications we get over at GEDA from our lending programs to the qualifying certificates, any common themes you see with people who just kind of don't get past the finish line?
I think it very similar to what the chairman said. They have a strong passion. And I think one of the things GEDA always supports is a strong passion for a business idea, right? But it's not, a lot of times if it's a loan application or people just coming in and inquiring about a QC or even VC, it's like, okay, I see the idea, I see the passion. Is there, what is the foundation underneath that would really help it succeed in the long haul? Because it's the same thing with the QC. With a QC, an income tax rebate is the prime benefit that a business receives. And we say, you're not really going to see, many businesses don't see an income tax benefit until
they're making
7 or 8 years, maybe 5, 6, 7 years down the road, when they're actually making a profit. So,
or if their company, it's capital intensive and they get all this depreciation.
Yeah.
They might be profitable from a cash flow, positive cash flow, I should say, but they're not necessarily, because they're write-offs on the depreciation side, they're not making tax money, right?
Exactly. So it's a lot of it is are they really working to get that solid foundation? I mean, and in GEDA, we're always very open, especially if it's a smaller business. There's resources on Guam for them, right? Small Business Development Center. I always say too, hey, if you know somebody, Guam is a small community. If you know somebody that runs a business, ask them, can you take half an hour to really just talk to me about, have a frank discussion about my idea and where I think it can go.
Right.
I think that's really important. When you come to GEDA, a bank, anywhere to get some seed money of any kind.
I would say don't get caught up in the trends du jour. During when GEDA was releasing all the daycare monies, right? I don't know how many cold calls I got from folks who were like, I want to open a daycare. Tell me about doing that. And I would say, okay, well, these are some of the things I think you go through. You go to public health and you talk to them about the CCDF program and they say, okay, I want to use my mom's house. Okay, you can do that. And okay, when can I get the grant money? And I said, well, our program's probably going to be done by then. So you're going to have
Yeah. Well, one of the other things I think fights against the entrepreneur is the attempt for perfection. And you think, oh, that doesn't sound right. We want to be perfect. No, you want to build on something. You don't want to start with a disaster, right? But you want to build.
Don't be embarrassing.
You want to Kaizen. I think is the term they use in Japan. You want to slowly improve upon it,
right?
And learn from your mistakes, because there's so many people that will be out there and they'll just think, I can't release this until it's perfect.
Right.
And you need to get out there and figure out what's working, what's not working, and get some cash flow coming back. And then focusing on the balance sheet of the company. That's a big one for me.
Yeah, and another thing too, it's I think some people think that at one business A, if it's a hotel A, hotel B, it's the same. No, each business has its unique needs, its unique challenges. So talking about the trend of the day, right? I mean, I would see in my years at GEDA, someone coming in, because all of a sudden food trucks were all the rage. So they came in and says, I want to do a barbecue food truck as well. And I think some of them come in saying, oh, because other business does a successful food truck, I think I can just do the same. And I'm like, but do
you cook?
Do you? Yeah, no. Say, have you done this before?
Yeah.
No. What is unique to you? I mean, if you're going to do the exact same food truck,
right?
Why do we need a second one? So I think that's also it's don't search too much for perfection, but also realize just because one other person did it doesn't automatically mean it's going to succeed if you just copy it and do it again.
Right.
Yeah, it comes down to the moat strategy, right?
Moat.
You want a moat around your moat, like a castle.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
You looked at me like moat. No, moat. Yeah, a moat around your business so that you've got some distance between you and your competitor. What makes you unique that's going to make it more difficult for someone to come in?
Penetrate that moat.
Take your moat.
They cannot take the castle.
Take the moat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I gotcha. That's good. That's good insight, sir.
I have some sometimes.
Every now and then.
Every once in a while.
Once in a
when
while.
I'm not mansplaining you.
Well, so, okay, back to GEDA's SSBCI Venture Capital Program. It requires a 10-year buyout or conversion. So, young David John running Administrative Services Corporation, was that what it was called?
Yep.
Administrative Services Corporation. If he came to GEDA back then and he said, I need some money, I need to make this happen, we would need him to provide us with things like an application, a business plan, and within that business plan, in his cash flow, he needs to show us a 10-year buyout or conversion. Okay, so a conversion meaning converted to a debt conversion, meaning the amount that GEDA gave you, you would convert to a loan and then pay it back. So it's almost it's like a deferred loan program. Can be treated
Can be
as
that way.
a deferred loan program, or it could be a buyout, and a buyout could be based on various ways to value the company, their cash flow, most commonly cash flow. So, in your experience, David, when it comes to buyouts and company valuation, really, you really honed in on cash flow. But are you seeing that consistently across multiple industries? So, do you think that's something we can apply to a restaurant, a daycare, a retail establishment? Those are the businesses that are visiting us at GEDA.
The ones you just mentioned, yeah. But if it was a hotel, no, right? It's just, is it capital intensive or is it service intensive?
Right. Okay.
I mean, so that differentiates big time, right? So when you look at the value of a business, does it have a balance sheet? Meaning, is the value of the business in the balance sheet like a real estate holding company?
Right.
Or is it based on the cash flows coming through? And a lot of people don't even realize what their business might be worth. They might think, I'm making $300,000 profit a year. My company's worth $300,000. No, it's not. It's probably worth anywhere from 2 to 3 times the top, or anywhere from 6 to 12 times EBITDA or earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, right?
So get yourself an accountant or find an accountant friend, find your local SBDC and say, and Google, what is EBITDA, EBITDA, right?
Yeah.
And then multiply it times 12.
For your industry, that's a high one. Yeah, I like that.
That is a high
I love
one.
that. Yeah, 12. Yes, that'd be nice.
Yeah, so multiply it times, more likely for maybe a restaurant, it'd be like 3.
I don't know what
4,
restaurants
5, I don't
are.
know.
Sure, yeah.
More
I would only say because I think I looked it up. We're not finding the industry wise. That's not a super high multiplier because it's easy the cachet of a restaurant a lot of times has to do with the owner or the novelty of
the shelf life.
Yeah, the shelf life of the novelty, right? Like these like like a fusion restaurant was all the rage when I was a young gal. It was like the hottest restaurant in New York was Asia de Cuba because they did Cuban food with Asian flair, and now that's just like a normal thing,
Right.
Like the frozen yogurt craze when everyone opened a frozen
Everyone
yogurt
opened
place.
yeah, and then
Getting me hungry. I love frozen yogurt.
what kind of paperwork should they be writing before coming to GEDA for an SSBCI venture capital?
Well, there's an
project?
application packet that's all on our website, investguam.com/Destinu if you want to go direct there.
Destinu spelled Destinu. Destinu.
Destinu, yeah. Destination Guam. We want you to come to Guam and invest. And also, so there's an application packet, some standard forms. Obviously, because it is a federal program, there will be some federal certifications that you'll have to sign and submit. But just like Mel said, a business plan, some financial information. There will be some information on who the investors will be, if you have partners, all of that kind of stuff. But in general, it's a pretty standard. I think it's a relatively standard packet. It's similar to a QC, actually. I always tell people what you would submit for a QC is basically what you would submit to anybody if you're going to go to a bank and ask for a big business loan. It's similar to this, but with more information on the shareholders and the partners and some other federal requirements.
And working through the financials when you are not a financial person, when you don't have that financial background, what kind of advice would you give them? So if I do hair and I'd like to open up a salon, where do I go for? Who does the project? If I can't do the projections, I don't know my way around an Excel spreadsheet. Where do you go?
I would get my way around an Excel spreadsheet. Today's world, right? You can learn anything just hitting YouTube, right?
Right.
So you can learn budgeting and how to use QuickBooks. But I would get into a QuickBooks type of thing early on,
right?
And just own your cash flow. I know I keep hitting on that. I'm boring. I'm not exciting, but that's it. You want to know what your expenses are.
Yeah.
You want to know how much it really costs for something, and then you want to know what's the multiple on your cost to what is going to drive profit. It's like in the service industry. There's one that's just been ingrained in my head, is that your top line should be 2.5 times your payroll. Payroll. It's just a service, right?
Okay.
I wasn't talking about the good side of it. It's of your overall payroll. So what you're paying, your benefits, your 401ks, your FICA taxes. Multiply that times 2.5. If you're doing that, you're going to be in the 20, 30% profit margin, and you're going to be fine.
Right.
But too many people, or too many failed businesses don't get that you need to have a certain multiple to stay in business. Also,
Are you a fan of the networking type stuff, though, David? Like, joining your local chamber, or joining your women's chamber,
Yes,
joining your
100%.
Rotary clubs, and
Yep.
things like that.
For a number of reasons, right? One, help get your product out there, help get other people out there,
Right.
the knowledge of your business.
Right.
The second is just learning from people, just like talking, what worked, what didn't work. And then when a problem comes up, especially in Guam,
Yeah.
you're one or two phone calls away from the solution you need if you have a good network.
Yeah, your struggles are almost never unique,
No,
right?
no.
Someone has experienced what you're experiencing and can help talk you through it. Sure.
And people want to, you would think, people might seem like they're out of reach, but if you really reach out to them and maybe drop a couple of compliments on them, build their ego. But most people got helped to get to
I
where they
really
were.
love your haircut,
Yeah.
David John.
You like my
Can
part?
I have 15 minutes of your time?
Yeah, that'll work great. No, seriously though, I mean, if you people typically had someone pull them up somehow, right? And they want to return the favor, and they want to help.
They want to, and I think and then identify people who are connectors, right? Who maybe that person doesn't run a million or bazillion dollar business, right? But they know people who have and
Yep,
can
that's
connect
another
you.
good one. Very good.
Warm introductions, right? That
Yep.
type of thing. I think we do that a lot. I mean, when I used to work in the Endowment Foundation, which you were a member of the board, the Endowment Foundation, a big one for us was warm leads as to finding donors, which was, hey, I noticed this company just had this huge success with this contract, but I don't know this company. Does anyone here know this company?
Yep.
Yes, I know them. Okay, we will do lunch. And a lot of times that was really the way in.
Yep.
Outside of also the networking, you kind of just got to you got to do all of it. You got to join.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
You got to join. Okay.
You do.
So let me see. We've talked about your past, about young David John. Let's talk about, if you could speak to young David John,
that was
the
the
early,
question. I was kidding.
the early 30s David, the late 20s, early 30s David John. What kind of advice would you give him?
From like what I failed at,
Yeah, sure.
Be
I mean,
lo-
career driven and building your business driven.
I would be more balanced.
Okay.
Yeah, I was working crazy hours. I'd be at the office 6, 7 in the morning. I'd go home at 6. I'd have dinner and I'd go back to work at 9. Work to 2 in the morning. So I mean, I wasn't sleeping much. I literally paid the price for it.
Yeah.
So that end of it, you need to put a balance on things. That would be the one thing from my experience.
Right.
Now, if I was talking to anybody else, like I would say that obviously be balanced to what you're doing. You need to be fully engaged and fully committed if you're going to start a business. It's not a part-time job, right?
Right.
I mean, I shouldn't say that. Someone might not have monetary aspirations. They just want to do something they enjoy.
Right.
They're passionate about it. It pays
Right.
the bills. You don't
But
need.
assuming you want to build a mini empire,
You got to work.
you got to,
You just got to be fully committed to doing that. But that doesn't mean put everything else aside.
Right.
I don't believe that. I did then, but I don't now. I think you should balance things out a little
You know,
bit.
you were also a product though of that culture. You
Yeah.
know, the Reagan 80s. That was like work hard. The harder you work, the better off you are. Right. The money, the Wall Street sort of that world.
Yep.
And so things have certainly started to just kind of shift. The profile of today's worker is different than it was, or the profile of today's entrepreneur is different than it was.
100%.
So finding balance.
Actually, I don't know if you need to worry about it with this generation.
With this generation, they love, but that's the issue. The balance is tipped in the have
way.
fun. Oh, you also have to work.
You said me going back. Now today's young people. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry. I gotta
Okay,
light the fire a little
how
bit.
long
Sorry.
do you? How
Don't mean
long?
to sound like
So
the
you
old
want
guy.
to light the fire for sure, but how long do you sustain a state of pain before you realize like business is not working?
If you're passionate about it,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's maybe correlated to your passion, right?
Right.
I mean, if you're just in it for the money,
Right.
you're going to burn out pretty quick.
Right.
But if you're passionate about something, when you're at work, it's almost like you're not at work. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but from a pain standpoint, you define the pain. Is it the
Financial pain, or
financial pain?
the alternative, of course, is being employed, right?
Right.
And it's like how long before you're running this business? I guess you sustain it as long as you can afford to.
Right.
Right.
That gets back to what? balance sheet. Sorry, keep bringing that in, but I'm telling you,
Right.
that's one thing I learned over the years. Early on, you think about profit and loss, and that's not it. It's just making sure you have the cash to pay the bills, to keep going, and if you can continue in the game, it will turn around into a level where you're bringing in, more cash than you need, and then you create the profit from there. It's a little bit different thinking than Wall Street, P&Ls, right?
Right.
Entrepreneurial P&Ls are, to me, the financial statement, it's more balance sheet than P&Ls.
Right. Right. And it's in a small island like Guam, it's also about really adapting to these just constant changes and the environmental changes, the economic landscape, the demographic changes. So all of that in sort of a fishbowl, right? All the things going on in America in like a fishbowl.
Which, he brings up a good point. As you're building your business in Guam, I think it's really important to have reserve funds.
Reserve funds.
Yeah.
And
I remember talking to some buddies that were living large right before, it was right before COVID happened, the summer before it. I'm like, are you guys ready for the next SARS? Maybe it jinxed us.
Maybe.
But
That's
it was just
pretty...
like, well, it was just, they just seemed like they're living above what I could see what they should be living like, right?
Okay.
It's like, it's nice that you're doing well, but are you putting any of this away?
Yeah.
Do you have reserves if something goes bad? If we have 60 or 90 days of no tourists, not 2 years, right?
Right.
No one could sustain that. If it wasn't for, the programs that GEDA put out and Matt and you deployed, I think a lot of businesses would have failed because this wasn't, that's not something anyone can afford to do. But you do have cyclical things that are going to happen in Guam. You're going to have the typhoon. You're going to have the SARS type things where you're not going to have tourists coming for a while. So you need to make sure you have reserves that can carry you forward.
But building reserves is so hard, especially for this generation.
Yep.
It's so hard. We just want to spend. I just want to spend. I want it now. I want the vacation now.
But when it comes to that, it comes down to you can do it in your business or yourself individually. It's just budgeting and making sure that this is how much money I can spend on entertainment. This is how much money I can spend on housing. This is how much money I should be putting away. Same with your business, right? This is how much money I can be putting towards capital goods, my payroll, and this is how much I should be putting towards reserves.
And that tends to get our solo entrepreneurs kind of wound up. Is there's so much just this unhealthy enmeshment between the two. Because they're living their life, they're working really hard, which is when they're healthy and able to work really hard, they're doing really well.
Yeah.
But the minute some kind of emergency occurs with them or a loved one or with their business or with the environment around them, it kind of throws them for a loop and there's no way back, right? That's scary.
It is scary.
Build a reserve.
Yep, build a reserve.
All right. So this has been a lot, Mr. Chair. Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Gems.
Good stuff.
Gems.
Gems.
Yeah. So any final thoughts? I wanted to kind of to walk away from this with any favorite books, authors, songs. Do you have a song? Okay, so when I'm going to go down to the legislature and I'm going to take on the legislature, I listen to gangster rap.
Nice.
Yep. Biggie.
Yep.
Jay-Z. I mean, depending if I'm feeling East Coast, West Coast.
I like that.
Okay. Do you have a fight song?
It would be anything AC/DC or the Guns N' Roses.
Rock and roll.
Sorry.
Welcome to the jungle.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, something like that. Something with some good, good guitar.
Yeah.
Get you pumped.
Yes. Okay.
But I like all kinds of music.
Yeah. But that's what I mean though. The getting you focused, like you have a big meeting, you're about to this could be a disaster.
Can you think of anything better than Welcome to the Jungle?
Yes.
It's just gonna crush you.
Yes.
Yep.
And then you walk out and you're like, yes, I feel good.
Yeah.
I feel good.
The problem is when your head's still banging when you're in the meeting.
Or in my case, I'm sitting at the legislature and I hear all the ways that they describe women being thrown in my ear, and I'm just, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am.
Just remember, they're not your actual boss.
No, that's
you don't have to.
It's more. Yep. It's all about education, right?
Yep.
Just like this podcast, it's all about education, aspiration, and trying to look good doing all of the things. Right. What about you, Matt?
What is my fight song?
Yeah.
I'm kind of weird. I actually kind of like silence. I'm pretty. If I really need to focus on something.
Yes.
And if I need
I
need to not get upset about something, I just kind of.
You just go in the room and mind.
I just turn it off. Or if I'm really, really upset and I need, some confidence to not lose it, maybe I'll put on church music.
Nice.
Because, sometimes I'm like, you know what? Lord, give me the strength. So
Jesus, Jesus, take the wheel.
I do realize he's a much
Jesus,
better
take the
person
wheel.
than both of us.
I mean,
right?
you know, I try. I try.
Gangster rap.
You know,
AC/DC.
I am
church music.
I am neither the CEO of GEDA nor am I the chairman. So I always put my best foot forward when dealing with anyone in an official capacity. So I will keep my cool and stay calm and carry on. Right. That's what they say.
Yeah.
But also I think because I worked in the legislature for so long and I've been in that political sphere. This is like my 15th year in Gov Guam in general. So I'm just kind of like, I kind of know how it goes, and you know,
challenging personalities. Notwithstanding, I mean, you know, I use the legislatures as an example,
but just in general, right?
There are challenging personalities in the world of business, in the world, you know, in the world of government, in the world of business. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, when we were running the grant programs, we had our share of challenging personalities then too. So you know, it's just a matter of turning on, you know, Biggie and being okay.
One of the things I will say though is, you know, as someone who has worked in the government in multiple capacities, right? I know when someone comes in, even to GEDA, they say, man, I really, really need some help with, my business is hurting, I need some help. We may be able to help with a program that we have, we may not, but I think it's always important. I always share this with the business development team is, just listen to them, because at least at the end of the day, the fact that someone listened to them and understood that I understand that you're going through something, and let me see if I can find someone to help you if we cannot help you ourselves. I think that really does help a lot of businesses actually push through. And I've seen that working at the legislature. I've seen it working at GEDA. Just having someone from the government or someone from an official capacity understanding their struggle and trying to guide them and help them, it means a lot.
Well, that actually, before we kind of close out here, that early signs of distress, you know, don't delay. Because a lot of times when business owners are already in the state where their house is about to get foreclosed, that's when they come to GEDA. Where it's like, you know, you probably could have had a year ago, you could have probably applied for a line of credit or something to kind of help you, you know, tide things over and get things back to normal. And at that point in time, maybe sought some counsel to wind up your business so that you're not in this state. I don't know. What do you think about that?
It's a hard one, though. I 100%, 1,000% agree with you. Just like everything else in life, people don't want to show other people that they're having trouble, right? We put out this facade. But I think if we talk about it earlier on, not just business, but anything else, right? Before it gets too late, that's the better. Not to say I've been good at it myself.
Well, and that goes back to you know, reaching out with the organizations like the Chamber, the Women's Chamber, you know, just building your network of like-minded individuals to really just kind of understand is this normal what I'm going through, or is everyone else feeling this, and so on and so forth, right? All right. Okay. Chairman John, for spending some time with us today. Your career's work, whether it was by design or by accident, I mean, you know, you've done a lot of great things. And we appreciate your service over at the Guam Economic Development Authority. But the career you've built and the companies you built will certainly inspire our listeners to this podcast about building their business in Guam. Matt, can you leave us with like where to find information about Destinu and all of that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Our GEDA website has a lot of information on all our programs. Again, www.investguam.com. You can call us 671-647-GEDA 4332. I just found out that 4332 means GEDA.
I just learned that now.
Yeah.
Wow.
I found that out last year. I'm like, oh, wow.
It's because you guys don't know what a dial looks like anymore.
You know, or, you know, you can come visit us at the ITC building, 5th floor. We're open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So, you know, and we're always ready and available to hear and see what we can do to help. So, you know, please call us, stop by. You can come. Since I'm here, you can ask for Matt, and I can guide you to where you need to go. So.
All right. So with all the free time you now have on your hands, Mr. Chair, because, you know, you mentioned you are in the process of winding down with ASC.
I'm on 9 boards right now.
9 boards.
It's not a lot.
I mean, it's not 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have any time to read? Do you have any favorite books?
I try to read every day.
Okay. What are you reading now?
I have like 6 books I'm reading, but the one I'm reading that was very interesting is Charlie Munger's book, Poor Charlie's Almanac. It's kind of based off Benjamin Franklin's almanac, but it has a lot of great. I mean, if you're going to read one book about just insights into things.
Yeah.
Just, common sense. I don't think there's anything you read in the book, you go, oh my God, how could you be so brilliant to think about that? But it's that someone who's been so successful just brings the success back to common sense things.
Right.
That we can all do.
We talk Art of War.
Art of War all the time. That's my favorite book, but I didn't want to, yeah.
And that's basically, why do you think that resonates so much with you in the world of doing business?
It's not just business. I don't know if you've read the book, but I have maybe like 8 different copies of it.
Okay.
Because it's translated.
Yeah, because it depends on the translator.
Exactly. And the more I've read different volumes and different insights into it, I don't think it was one person. I don't think Sun Tzu was one person. I think it was a conglomeration of a number of generals and
like Aesop's Fables
leaders. Yeah. But it just gives you insight on how to tackle problems, how to deal with people in business and war, or just in relationships.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're not at war with Ray, but you also need to move.
You don't know me.
Yeah. You don't need to be run over by Ray, and you want to get what you want accomplished, and allowing him to believe he's winning.
Right. Right.
So, Art of War just gives good strategy on how to get through.
Strategy on interpersonal relationships, which are both important in the home as well as in the work.
First time I read it was all about business, but then I started reading back through it, and it's about relationships.
It's about all the things.
It's a lot of things.
Yeah. Right on. What about you, Matt? Favorite book?
Favorite book?
Or what you're reading now, either or?
You know what I picked, I will admit, I'm not reading a book right now, but I was cleaning out my closet and then I found my copy of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Mm-hmm. And I was like, ooh, let me refresh this.
You're going to say your Playboy magazine.
No, not my Playboy magazines. No, that's in a, no, I'm just joking. No, but I picked it up because one of the things I always tell people when they come in, actually, makes a lot of sense. Come in again, I'm like, okay, so if you started this business, where do you see yourself in 3 years, 5 years, And I try to talk to them about that. One of the things they always talk about is begin with the end in mind in the 7 habits, right? So that was something that I was reading. I said, oh, it's a good refresher for me. Favorite book, I have to say, it's To Kill a Mockingbird. I had to read that in high school. And, every once in a while, I kind of think about it.
Over at GEDA, we always tell Matt he should have gone to law school.
Yeah, so I think maybe that's why people think I should be a lawyer. But I'm like, I think I'm doing good for the people of Guam.
You sure?
In my job at GEDA.
Sure.
Yeah.
Nice. I wouldn't say I have a favorite book, but very recently, in the last 12 months or so, I was reading Atomic Habits, and that's something that I pick up over and over and over because I think what I was doing was in 2023, I said the theme for this year is consistency. And it really is just about every single day, just trying to just get marginally, incrementally better and more efficient and more, mainly because I have to do all this work-life balance with the kids and the work and all that stuff. What I'm reading right now is this book called Financial Feminist. And it's this woman who talks about personal finance through the lens of taking down the patriarchy. It's all right. It's cool. It kind of actually, I listened to her podcast and her podcast is very interesting. And so her book kind of has, you can hear her voice in the book you can hear her podcast voice in the book.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting, but it talks about stuff. Quite honestly, it delves into history. Women couldn't have a credit card in their own name until the 70s. And women had to have a man on her, a mortgage till the early 80s. This is within our lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
My older sister became an adult in the 80s and her starting her career versus me starting my career now. There are things that I don't have to deal with at all that we're thinking, and that's the kind of stuff that in my mind, I'm like, what? And, and how that then dictates your financial behavior and the decisions you make, the investments you make, how you organize. And a lot of times a lot of the book is, you talked about balance earlier, is just this idea of stop beating yourself up or of circumstances that have occurred from a combination of history, market circumstances, and your own human behavior, right? Mm-hmm. So it's pretty interesting. All right. We did favorite books. Oh, what is number one quality that you need to survive and thrive in business in Guam?
Be an expert in general principles, whatever you do in your business. It sounds funny, but
be an expert. One more time.
Be an expert in kind of the general principles of your business, as opposed to an expert. We're not a big enough community to be just to do brain surgery. There's just not enough brain surgeries, right?
Right.
So when it comes to like our business, I'm on different groups that I meet with people back in the States, and I'll listen to, it's boring stuff, but I'll listen to someone who's talking about, say, a distribution and just all the nuances of how you go through this distribution. The person will talk about it. It's just a genius. And then you talk to them about investments and they know nothing, right? So you're in your little silo that you have your expertise. But in Guam, we need to be generalists. We need to be entrepreneurs. We need to be able to cross over. You need to be good at kind of everything, not necessarily great at anything.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if you can do that, because you're going to have to carry a lot of hats. You're going to have to fill a lot of different areas where.
And you're going to have to choose. Sometimes you have to diversify your customer base. And if you don't have, you have to diversify your product offering. Sometimes you got to be ready to do it at any given time. Yeah. All right. Matt?
I think to piggyback, adaptability is a crucial characteristic to have, because people come in, they have one idea, and then it's kind of working, and then it stops working, and they just don't know how to, they're either maybe too stubborn or not aware of how to adjust. And we've seen people come in saying it's not working, and we'll ask them, well, have you considered looking at it on the other side of the coin? And they're like, oh, I never thought of that. So having the ability, or I think part of that maybe is part of personal pride. They're like, this needs to work the way I want it to work. So being open to change and adaptability as things go a different way is very important.
Yeah. How many times have you seen someone who's talking about before COVID was talking about the tourism horizon, was saying the Koreans don't do this like the Japanese, the Koreans don't do this like the Japanese. And you look at them like, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do about it?
You can't go back in time. You have to adapt. That's perfect. That's a good one.
Right. I think for me, it's at least from what I noticed in the government of Guam is, having a real like down to earth, humble attitude. In Guam as the island doing business, there's so many times you really got to go in there yourself, and you have to have face to face contact with someone. And if you're talking down to them, they're just going to be like, doors closed, goodbye. Right. Whereas if you if you share your ideas, and this is not just in your interaction in a government agency, but if you're interacting with people and you come across as kind of arrogant, then they're kind of they're not really going to look out for you. But if you come across as earnest and humble, then a lot of times you have people who look out for opportunities for you. And they're like, hey, I heard about this thing. I thought of you, because we're so quick now with communications with WhatsApp. In so many of the GEDA programs have been built off of interactions we've had off of business owners who've just come to visit us. They told us their story. We were like, oh, they're cool people. We'd like to help them. Oh, we'll figure it out. And we kind of have them in our Rolodex. And then something comes up and we're like, come on, if someone comes in and they're like, oh, you don't have this like the States? Then I'm like, oh, get out of here.
There's an airplane.
Throw it away. Erase their name from my directory.
That's just a term. I remember when I first got out of school, I had this old hockey booster that would bring me into his office once a month, and he talked. One day he just looked at me and he said, if you forget everything we've talked about, I want you to remember one thing. I did forget everything else we talked about. But the one thing, he says, treat everybody the way you want to be treated. I'm looking at him like, huh? He goes, you didn't hear me. I said, I heard you. He said 3 or 4 times. I go, I heard you. He goes, you didn't hear a word I said. Because you're thinking of it from the biblical sense that you learn in church. I said, yeah. Because that's not what I mean. He goes, that's the good reason why you'd want to do it. But also do it because you just never know who's going to be that person that is in front of you for something. And so even if you're not doing it for the right reasons, which I hope you're doing it for, you should treat everybody the way you want to be treated. Unfortunately for you, is I like to get punched in the face, so that's the way I like to be treated.
Can we? You know what? I actually did want to bring this into today's episode. Was I happen to know, sir, that you had a dream as a young David John, adolescent David John, to be a professional hockey player. Yeah. Now, tell me about that. Didn't work out for you. Please explain to our readers how that fell apart and how long it took you to bounce back. I mean, what was it that caused you to bounce back? And is her name Teresa Ada John?
So I got injured. And, that ended quickly. And then I realized that maybe I should have studied. So I had to rebuild education.
Now, how long did that take from the injury to oh, wow, I should study?
Well, right away. As soon as I went I went to university, I got a rude awakening. And then I struggled for a couple of years. And I'm not joking when I say I met my wife. She turned me around.
Because you like being punched in the face.
Punched in the face. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, join us for our next episode of Guampreneurs as we continue to talk story, talk economy, and most importantly, talk action to activate your inner Guampreneur. Sijus Malasi, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
For information on GEDA small business lending programs, visit www.investguam.com, and on small business support, click on the Financial Assistance for Businesses link.